This is a post from Father David Nix regarding the horrific wildfires in California. It includes a picture of St. Elizabeth of Hungary Catholic Church in Altadena and reads as follows. I just talked to a married friend on the phone in Los Angeles who lives near this church. Many of the homes around him burned down, but his home had the purple scapular, and they doused it in holy water, and that family lives a very holy life. Miraculously, their home is fine. Another post from Catholic Vote shows a photo of a statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe and reads, "A statue of the Virgin Mary was discovered untouched in the ruins of homes destroyed during the Los Angeles fires." Now, I haven't had time to extensively verify either of these incredible stories, but I do know of a very well-documented miracle connected to another fire of enormous proportions, the Great Peshtigo Fire of 1871, in which a group of faithful Catholics relied upon divine intervention. This video will go over the miracle of the tabernacle and the preservation of an entire church.
The Catholic Men's Podcast, helping you find good works of literature for the Catholic gentleman.
The Peshtigo Fire happened on October 8th, the same day as the Great Chicago Fire that's so well known in American history. Though overshadowed by the Chicago Fire, the Peshtigo blaze killed more people, around 2,500, and destroyed more property, over 1.2 million acres. Gathered in a wooden church dedicated to Our Lady of Good Help, a small group of Catholics begged God to intervene. What followed became arguably the greatest intervention of Our Lady during a calamity in American history. The magnitude of the miracle can be gauged by the destructiveness of the fire. It started in the city of Peshtigo, Wisconsin, an hour north of Green Bay. Father Peter Pernin describes the ferocity of the blaze in his book, The Great Peshtigo Fire, an eyewitness account. No one knows how the fire started. What was known was that it was made worse by a particularly dry year and hurricane-strength wind. It was obvious that wildfires were imminent. On October 6, 1871, Father Pernin saw a stump spontaneously burst into flames, even though there were no sparks or fire nearby. While the fire was put out, it signaled worse calamities yet to come. For days, the priest had seen a red glow in the sky. He also heard loud noises in the distance, like the sounds of numerous carts and trains. As the noise and the glow grew closer, Father Pernin decided to prepare for the worst. It took him several hours to dig a pit in the ground to bury sacred objects, statues, books, linens, and vestments under a foot of dirt, which he considered sufficient. In the meantime, people laughed at him for taking these precautions. Other men who had recently arrived to work in the area were housed at a nearby tavern. As the fire approached, they busied themselves in drinking, cajoling, wrestling, and even blaspheming. They bolted the doors of the tavern shut, as if that would be enough to keep the danger away. As he finished covering his pit, Father Pernin barely had time to release his horse and load the tabernacle into a handcart before the wildfire reached Peshtigo. He called for his dog, but it refused to budge from under the bed. He was terrified. As he went through the city to head for the river, he and his cart were blown against the tavern wall by the force of a sudden wind. He forced his way against the wind and came upon his horse, which was also frozen in fear and refused to move. The conflagration was soon upon the village, and everything was in chaos. The clang of carts, frightened cries of a myriad of animals, and the roar of the inferno instilled a terror in the hearts of the living. People ran in all directions. Father Pernin tripped and fell upon the dead bodies of a mother and her daughter. Along one side of the river, the flames from the village buildings formed an impenetrable canopy of fire. Father Pernin went to the other side. At the edge of the water, he found people as far as the eye could see, standing, gazing in stunned amazement and with mouths agape at the sight of the flames around them. He started pushing them into the river since it was the only safe place. He placed the wagon with the tabernacle in the water as well. Immediately, everyone around him followed suit and waded into the water. The air became a mixture of ash, sparks, smoke, fire, and oppressive heat. At one point, a wooden mill burst into flames. This structure, which normally would take hours to burn down, was consumed in 30 minutes. The heat was so intense that when Father Pernin decided to test the temperature by standing above the water, the clothes on his back instantly burst into flames. He quickly submerged himself below the water line and had to repeatedly splash water over his head to keep it from roasting in the heat. Everyone continued splashing water over themselves for almost 5 hours. At one point, Father Pernin described the air above them as a tornado of fire, brighter than day, even causing temporary blindness. It was a scene of hell on earth, a true inferno. A lady next to the priest asked, "Father, is this the end of the world?" Not knowing what to say, he replied, "Perhaps not the whole world, but if the surrounding countryside were burning like this, it would be the end of our world." The fire eventually burned itself out in Peshtigo, jumping across a nearby bay, a distance of about 10 miles at its narrowest point. With the hurricane-like winds serving as bellows, the fire continued on its destructive path, eventually burning a total of 1.2 million acres. Incredibly, Father Pernin was able to locate his tabernacle again and found it floating on a log in the river. Though all the logs around it were scorched and blackened, the tabernacle was unscathed and gleaming in the sun. To his utter amazement, the Blessed Sacrament inside was fully intact and never sustained any water damage whatsoever. You doing all right, Griffin? I think he's okay. As this chaos was unfolding in Peshtigo, there was a different scene at the village of Robinsonville, Wisconsin. Now called Champion, this village lay right in the path of the untamable inferno. The village was the site of the first approved apparition of Our Lady in the United States. She had appeared to Sister Adele Breeze in 1859. In honor of the apparition, a wooden chapel was built dedicated to Our Lady of Good Help. Many locals believed in the apparition, largely due to Sister Adele's reputation of holiness. In the early morning of October 9th, the locals fled to the safety of Our Lady of Good Help's protection. It seems irrational to seek safety in a wooden structure in the middle of the greatest wildfire in American history. However, faith sometimes goes against what seems rational. They abandoned themselves to practice the great virtue of confidence, hoping against all hope. The locals had so much confidence in Our Lady's protection that they drove their livestock onto the chapel grounds. Sister Adele led the inhabitants in a procession outside with a statue of Our Lady while praying the rosary. When the air became oppressive, they were forced to continue inside. The voices of the faithful filled the air with hopeful prayer. Outside, the ever-hungry inferno was raging, ready to devour everything in its path. However, the wooden structure miraculously refused to burn. The prayers of the faithful were heard. The heavy winds that drove the conflagration stilled, and the fire abated. The sweet sound of rainfall soon followed. It was as immediate as when Jesus raised his hand to calm the storm. The faithful were in awe. Salvation from the fire had finally come. Father Pernin, who witnessed firsthand the unyielding savagery of fire in Peshtigo, went to investigate this alleged miracle with his own eyes. He recounted what he saw in a second manuscript called The Finger of God. All the houses and fences in the neighborhood had been burned, he wrote, with the exception of the school, the chapel, and fences surrounding the 6 acres of land consecrated to the Blessed Virgin. The property, sanctified by the visible presence of the Mother of God, now shone out like an emerald island amid a sea of ashes. Father Pernin's description of the church ground as an emerald island could be seen in the grass inside the fence that kept its lush, healthy color. All the local inhabitants and their livestock were spared. The wooden chapel was spared. The wooden fence surrounding the grounds was spared. Is there not a lesson to be learned from this? The miracle was instrumental in convincing Bishop David Ricken to declare on December 8, 2010, the authenticity of the apparitions of 1859 to Sister Adele Breeze. This holy site is now called the Shrine of Our Lady of Good Help. Incredibly, the Great Peshtigo Fire abated on the 12th anniversary of one of the apparitions, October 9th. This story was taken from an article written by Mr. Rex Teodosio, my friend, so special thanks to him for his excellent research. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, just click on the link above me here. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you. Let's go, boy. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful sunset.